equal better service. But what we have seen, especially working on the logistics side, that thinking actually creates more problems than it solves. It creates more delays, more tied up cash. So today we are getting into the truth behind inventory. And my bestie today is someone who has been in this space for decades, Matthew Schreitfeder, Vice President of Effective Inventory Management, a company that has been helping businesses optimize inventory since 1996, built by his father, and now Matthew is helping lead the next chapter. Matthew, welcome in. So happy to have you as my bestie today.
Oh, thank you.
Matthew, so you also bring a strong technical background, right? You studied at the Virginia Military Institute and worked as an engineer, project control, and cost analysis. So tell us more how it helped you work in inventory space.
Okay. Yeah, so prior to joining Effective Inventory Management, I was a cost and schedule engineer with ExxonMobil. Um, a lot of data analysis, really trying to pull information out of just seas and seas of data that was available to us, really trying to understand what was going on, what decisions needed to be made, really giving the my bosses, the people in charge, information to help them
Mhm.
make decisions with keeping our larger projects on schedule and on time.
Yeah. So, Matthew, most companies think that more inventory protects them, but from what you have seen, where does that thinking actually go wrong?
So we need to make sure that we're accounting for the entire cost of inventory. And
Mhm.
there's three very important aspects to that. There's what we actually pay our vendor.
Mhm.
Um, and then with that, we would also include any, freight costs or anything like that. So the true cost of material coming in.
Mhm.
Um, the thing that people don't give a lot of thought to is the cost of carrying inventory. It costs
Mhm.
us money to have a large amount of inventory in our warehouse. The longer material is in our warehouse, the more insurance we might have to pay on it. We have to pay additional money to count inventory. If it's not there, I don't have to count it. We have to worry about spoilage in some cases. We have to worry about, unfortunately, pilferage, things getting up and walking out of the warehouse without us wanting to. Longer things are there, the higher chances are that it might get broken.
Mhm.
Any number of things. So we need to account for that. And what I've seen time and time again are companies chasing gross margin. And
Mhm.
gross margin, sales minus cost divided by sales, doesn't account for the cost of carrying inventory. The way
Mhm.
you get gross margin to look better is you buy in bulk. You buy a whole bunch. I need 5. I get a better cost if I buy 150, so I'm going to buy the 150. I
Mhm.
make a killing on the 5 that I really needed. Unfortunately, 145 of them are going to sit on the shelf potentially forever.
Oh, wow.
Um, so we want to make sure that we account for the cost of carrying inventory in our warehouse and really understand what our true profitability is. The third
Mhm.
cost, which isn't as big for most distributors, are the cost of replenishing inventory.
Mhm.
The accounts payable activities, the approval process, all of those things. Generally, we're looking $3, $4, $5 per line of a purchase order with our vendor. So not a
Mhm.
huge cost, but it can add up. If we're doing any kind of manufacturing, we'd have to account for scrap factors in there as well, which
Oh, wow.
can get very, very expensive.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you for sharing that. You kind of answered my next question, but what is a mistake you see over and over again, even from experienced companies that keep doing it and they should know about?
Um, so a lot of it is not understanding the true position of where we are. And
Mhm.
most companies, they're in business for a reason. They're making money. They're doing good things.
Mhm.
But they get into the habit of, this is what we do because it's what we've always done.
Mhm.
And not necessarily saying we need to throw everything out and start again from scratch, but really looking at just standard operating procedures. I was working with a client and they just had built into their philosophy, they get price breaks. So whatever it is, they want to make sure that they're saving 3, 4, 5% off of whatever it is from their vendor. And that works fine right up until the point that they're having to purchase 2-3 years worth of material in order to save 2 to 3%. On paper, those numbers don't start to add up. The one that's very, very common are companies that require to hit free freight requirements. So a vendor says you place an order for $10,000, we'll throw in free freight. Unfortunately, EIM believes there's no such thing as free freight. It's just a discount. It sounds a lot better than 2, 3, 4, 5% off the total order, but it's free freight. People like free stuff. Unfortunately, if we're forced to bring in a huge quantity of material in order to hit that brief freight, that carrying cost might outweigh the cost of carrying that inventory.
Oh, wow. Matthew, so you mentioned off camera something really interesting, that some companies are waiting years between ordering and receiving materials. How do you even begin to plan inventory when timeline looks like that?
So incredibly long lead times are a challenge, especially with whatever the current global problems are right now. What they might be next week, very different than this week. So with longer lead times, we have to account for not what our forecast or what I expect to need today is. I need to plan on what I'm expecting to need 6, 9, 12 months from now. We call that distribution requirements planning, to where my forecast today doesn't matter. My forecast way out in the future is one that matters. Additionally, I need to look at what I've already potentially got on order. We saw this all the time during COVID, where people were repeatedly placing orders, hoping some of that material was going to show up eventually. Well, eventually it all will show up. So we want to make sure that we're not, the example we use is walking up to an elevator and continuing to press the up button. It's not going to get there any sooner, but we do need to account for the fact that all this stuff is going to show up at some point. If we're in a situation where we have no confidence that material is going to show up at all, at that point, I'd say we don't really have an order. We have more of a wish. We're really hoping this shows up, but I have no confidence that it's going to. In that case, probably want to look at canceling orders if we can, and starting to find other sources of supply, whether that be replacement part or substitute items. So I'd really like to sell item A, but item B will do in a pinch. So bring that in. Hopefully my customers will be satisfied with replacements. Best example of that was during COVID, where at the grocery store, we started seeing really interesting brands of paper towels, because anything that looked like a paper towel was getting sold as a paper towel, regardless of what the brand name was.
So that's very interesting. So during COVID, these companies couldn't predict what's gonna happen, right? Until the COVID started. So how they do the inventory planning, how they order these big bulks of products to keep it going, or they have reserves? How does it work?
So there's no right or wrong answer to a lot of it, but what EIM strives to do is make any decision that we're making an informed one. Because every time we buy anything and bring it into our warehouse, there's a chance we're not going to be able to sell it. So if we are dealing with another COVID situation in which our sales history is just a mess because we didn't sell anything, because we didn't have anything, we might need to prime the pump a little bit on our expected usage and change the data, change our forecast to what we hope to use in the future. And it might be a situation in which we are scrambling from alternative vendors, alternative product lines, alternative everything, just to try and maintain some level of service for our customers. With any of those situations, COVID was unique because COVID was like essentially across the board, nobody could get anything. In that case, people were just buying to fill up shelves. But a lot of what we're seeing now are kind of selective outages.
Mhm.
A certain vendor might not be able to supply material because of issues between, their logistics route, or they might have manufacturer might be out of a particular raw material. So transitioning to these selective replacement parts, we just need to make sure that as soon as what we wanted to sell is available again, we get rid of all the substitutes as quickly as possible because they're going to rapidly lose value. So a lot of it just has to be look at where we are right now. What are our available solutions? Am I willing to risk a certain amount of money
Mhm.
with these replacement parts, or what I hope to sell out in the future, and see if it passes a sniff test, if we are willing to take those kinds of risks.
Yeah. Matthew, so we are in a world now that automation and artificial intelligence are everywhere, but people still don't fully trust these systems. Why do you think that is? And do you see AI replacing decision making in inventory or just supporting it?
I'll answer the second part first. I see it supporting um, the decision making. AI is very good at some things and not so good at others. AI is incredibly good at sifting through data and highlighting things that might stand out or something like that. It's not so good at making decisions quite yet. And what I've found is any of the automated systems, proprietary algorithms, automated systems, the reason people don't, or in my experience, haven't been as willing to jump on board with them is that people can't explain to them exactly how they're working. No system is perfect. The one that EIM has developed, any other one, there are going to be issues with particular parts, with particular product lines, weird sales, things like that. If we can't understand how our forecasts or how our replenishment levels are being determined and something goes wrong, the entire process kind of loses credibility. Um,
Yeah.
the thing I always go back to is, if my phone isn't getting connection when I'm someplace, I just blame my carrier. I
Yeah.
don't know how my phone works. I have no idea. I
Mhm.
just expect it to. And if it's not working, then the entire thing is garbage. So we really need to understand how those calculations are being made. So when something goes wrong, we can make corrections to it or account for those issues along
Yeah.
with it. So I don't see AI in itself right now replacing decision making. I do see it, helping to the investigation side of it. We did see something strange happen last month. Use AI to sift through all of our sales history
Mhm.
or everything else, or look at our receipts from our vendors. Quickly pull it up. It's normally we were expecting a 3-week lead time. This
Yeah.
time it took 6.5 months. Highlight those kinds of situations for us.
Yes. That's amazing. So it's kind of doing your audit, right?
Exactly. Yeah, really auditing, reviewing, pulling up strange situations. But what AI can't do, and what no system can do, is impart the knowledge that we've gained,
Exactly.
both from the you know the rest of
Past.
industry, reading the news, um,
Mhm.
different sources of information, whether that be our sales department, whether that be management, trade magazines. If what's going to happen in the future is different than the past, we're going to need to try and augment the AI algorithms or any algorithms to truly perform better.
Yeah. So, Matthew, if you had to simplify inventory management into 2 to 3 rules, what should every company be doing right now?
Hmm. Um, so the first rule, and I've kind of already said it, is really understand how our systems are operating.
Mhm.
Not I don't necessarily think you need to get down into the code or understand it, but truly understand the the drivers for
Mm-hmm.
what decision making is occurring. The second one is understand our total cost of inventory. Use that, at EIM, we refer to it as an adjusted margin. So I mentioned the gross margin, but from sales and costs. So from profit in the numerator, we're going to subtract off the cost of carrying inventory and make sure all of our situations are profitable. Every product that we've chosen to stock or carry in our warehouse should either be profitable or lead to other profitable sales. There are some things that we might carry as a service to our customers, really slow moving things that people just expect us to have.
Mm-hmm.
As long as they're cheap, they might be worth keeping on. But if our better items, our A movers, whatever we want to classify as our best products, we're carrying so much inventory that we're actually losing money on them. Those are the situations that we need to identify and try and figure out a better way of stocking that material.
Yeah. Thank
Mhm.
you. Well, Matthew, as you know, I am a logistics girl, so I have to ask, what does poor inventory planning, how does it impact transportation and logistics from your perspective?
Um, Poor inventory planning, it leads to emergent orders. Um,
Mhm.
you, I mentioned, free freight targets and things like that. Um, we want to try and set things up so we can naturally meet those target orders when we
Mhm.
can. What we want to try and avoid is a situation where I either have to fill up a container or I have to meet a $10,000 order or something like that, and I've got a need that I'll satisfy about 5% of it. And now I have to fill in the rest of everything with um, things that I really don't want to buy right now. And as
Yeah.
I'm sure you're well aware, trying to get things done quickly and in a hurry adds a lot of cost. If we can plan things out, generally it's not quite as expensive. I mean,
Mhm.
especially if we're importing. The difference between being able to send something in a container and having to put it on a plane is astronomically different. So a lot of poor planning leads to emergencies, leads to more costs, leads to loss of profitability.
Yeah. So you have been around since 1996, right? Your dad founded the company, and you have seen this industry evolve. What has
Mhm.
changed the most, and where do you see inventory management going to the next few years?
As we've continued to evolve, a lot more, overseas business, a lot more direct interaction with overseas vendors and things like that. Just because it's now so much easier to communicate, place orders directly with vendors, fill up containers specifically for us.
Mhm.
Whereas before, not many people would actually import, and there would be just importers, and then they distribute to other distributors
Mhm.
locally. Um, so huge opportunities with bringing over your own containers and things like that now, but it adds a level of complication
Yeah.
with dealing with much longer lead times, potentially inconsistent, much longer lead times.
Mhm.
Um, since COVID um, occurred, we really saw the impacts of not being able to get material to come in via ship
Mhm.
in
Yeah.
in a quick way. The other thing that we've really, really seen is the expectation that customers have to have everything on hand now.
Yes.
Um, with online ordering becoming a thing, you place an order, customers start to get annoyed if they don't have a shipment confirmation coming to their desk within an hour.
Exactly.
We expect everybody to be stocked like Amazon, um, and that's not really practical. So we always have, and you mentioned it before, more inventory, better customer service, which is absolutely true in most cases.
Mhm.
But there is a limit to that. We have to always make sure that we are profitable. We can't have perfect customer service. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
We can't have, emergency levels of all products across the board. We have to in some cases pick and choose. We're going to have near perfect service on this other stuff, not so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This leads to my next question. So how do you think Amazon is doing great on customer service, but at the same time, one of the most profitable companies, right? How do they do it? Is it because they have like individual private label companies that trying to make it happen?
I mean, they are incredibly profitable. It's incredibly impressive, and they've invested in the network to have
Mm-hmm.
local deliveries, local warehouses, pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that, and I don't know this for a fact, but I'm sure their margins aren't great, but they just make up for it in just massive amounts of sales, turning their inventory over very, very, very rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
They've also, their prime situation, I mentioned there's no such thing as free freight. Well, you have to pay a subscription to be a prime member to get the free freight. So you're paying
Yeah.
for it just indirectly.
Yes.
But they've really set a new standard, I think, for, same day delivery, very, very quick. And they seem to always be, trying to improve that a little bit.
Yeah.
Whether that'll work absolutely long term, I don't know. But it is incredibly impressive with what they've done so far.
I agree.
Mhm.
So, Matthew, before we jump into our rapid fire questions, I would love to shout out to today's sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Digital Permit Book. If you are a carrier company, you already know how messy documents can get. Permits, cab cards, insurance, driver info all over the place. Digital Permit Book puts everything in one place, clean, organized, and instantly accessible. So check them out. So now, Matthew, are you ready for a quick rapid fire question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Overstock or understock? What is worse?
Understock is worse.
One met.
Disappoint. Oh,
Mhm.
sorry, go ahead.
Yes, we're just doing it fast.
Okay.
Yes, one metric every company should track.
Adjusted margins.
Biggest inventory myth.
If I buy a lot, I'll be able to sell a lot, and therefore I'll make more money.
Spreadsheet or system.
System.
AI in inventory. Overrated or underrated?
I think it's overrated right now.
Thank you so much, Matthew. This was so good. I'm sure our audience learned a lot. I specifically learned a lot from you. And I think a lot of people are going to realize inventory isn't just operation, it is a strategy. So thank you so much for coming in and sharing your insights. And for everyone listening, if you got value from this episode, make sure you subscribe, share it with someone in your network, and reach out to Matthew for your inventory management. Thank you so much, Matthew, for coming in, and I will see you on the next one.
Thank you.